Okay, so we're talking the basics of anatomy and physiology. Well, if we're going to talk basics, I guess one of the things that we have to talk about is we got to talk about the actual words anatomy and physiology. Now, what's funny is that we call the class anatomy and physiology, but really that's like a combination of sciences rolled into one. It makes it sound like it's chemistry or biochemistry, but those classes are an actual science unto itself. But in order to understand anatomy and physiology, you really got to understand like multiple different sciences, which is why anatomy and physiology throws people for a loop and why sometimes it frustrates people and they're unable to really grasp the concepts in the class, because you got to understand some biology, you got to understand some chemistry, you got to understand some biochemistry, you got to understand some genetics, you got to understand some mechanics, some physical sciences. There's a lot of basics that you really need in order to fully grasp anatomy and physiology. So we're going to take our time and extract those different sciences. We'll highlight them when you should know them, and then kind of put them together to build these concepts. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about with anatomy and physiology is the word anatomy and the word physiology. The word anatomy is usually referring to the study of structure, right? While physiology is typically talking about the study of function. So the study of structure is how something looks, where it's positioned, its shape as compared to other things that are similar to it. And then physiology is study of function, which is how something works, how something does what it does. And then when we get into things like pathology and disease, that's when we start talking about, well, this is what happens when the functions break down. This is what happens when we break down the structures. The structures break down, and therefore the functions break down. And these are the expectations that we can have for it. So anatomy and physiology, that's the keys to it. Anatomy is, this is what this thing looks like. Now, here's something that's important to remember about anatomy and physiology, and that is that structure defines function. Structure defines function. Structure defines function. Anatomy defines physiology. Something is shaped the way that it's shaped because that shape allows it to do something special. It's kind of like when you study the cells of the body and you're like, well, wait a minute. I thought you were talking about anatomy and physiology. Now this dude is talking about cells. Well, cells are part of anatomy and physiology. We're going to be going there later. But when you look at the cells of the body, some cells are flat. The reason why those cells are flat in certain locations of the body is because they are allowing things to pass through them. Like they're trying to be a sort of barrier, but they're not focusing on strength. They're not focusing on protection. They're focusing on transparency. They're focusing on things being able to transfer from one side of the wall to the other side, whereas some cells are shaped like giant pillars stacked on top of one another. And because of their shape, they're really focusing on protection. They're not trying to let anything pass across the wall. Their focus is trying to minimize anything from getting across the wall, becoming a protective barrier and resisting the passage of anything across that barrier. In this particular situation, with these two comparisons, with these two cells, we're looking at how the structure has just now defined the function. Look at the heart. The heart has 4 chambers. But when you look at the chambers, you see that they've got valves. And if you look at the valves, the way that your valves are shaped, they're shaped so that if the blood ever tries to go backwards and tries to go the other way, it pushes against those valves, right? These valves are designed so that they help blood go in one direction. They're shaped like that. So once again, structure defines function. These are supposed to be one-way valves. So that's something that's really key to pay attention to. Now, the question that most students have at this point is, when should I pay attention to the structure And when should the structure tell me something about the function? Unfortunately, the answer is always. As a scientist, we want to be observant of all things. So we're always observing what we see. We're always being curious about what we see. We should get to the place where we ask the question, why is it shaped like that? Why is that one long and why is that one short? Why is that one boxy and why is that one circular? Why does that one have a hole in it and why does that have no holes in it at all? We want to get to the place where we're asking those questions so that we can get a definitive answer. And what I'm kind of hoping in my videos is that I'm able to find those answers so that we finally have an answer as to why something exists and why does it look the way that we look. So that's all I got to say for today. If you please, if you enjoyed this video, if it, learned something from it, please like it, share it, subscribe. We'll talk soon. Peace.